Well, welcome to the class today. I'm going to do something I always forget to do. I forgot to do it yesterday. I'm going to introduce myself. Um, I always get so excited and get into the class, I just jump into it. So my name is Eric Eisenmenger. I've been involved with Bo for, I really don't know, maybe 20 years, maybe a couple years less, but it's been about that much. I have never missed a year, and I have no desire to miss any years. So unless something bad happens, I will not be missing Bo. Obviously, virtual is not my first choice. I think we would all rather be in person, but this is what we've got, and we'll make the best of it. And hopefully next year we can all be together at a weekend at one of the Fish and Wildlife camps. So obviously we're doing a shooting class, but it's kind of hard to shoot virtually. So we're going to talk about some things that don't actually involve pulling the trigger on a range, which would be how to pick a particular firearm based on what you want to do with it, and then how to safely handle it. And we'll talk about the safety features, eye and ear protection, gun protection from unauthorized people in your house, and how to maintain your gun and what to do, what to pick. And I put my phone number, if you look at the chat, it's got my name and my phone number on it. So here's the problem and the challenge with having an hour-and-a-half class. There is a lot of information to try to feed you in an hour-and-a-half. My fear with our time frame is not being able to cover everything that we need to cover. I'm giving you my phone number. I'm going to mention this a couple of times throughout this course. That feel free to call me if you want to discuss any of this after this class, okay? That's my commitment to your education, is I will spend that time with you on the phone. If you're near Frankfurt, I don't care to spend time with you on the range and help you in your education of whatever you want to learn. I did reach out via email, and I have some questions from you all, so we'll try to cover those as we go throughout the class. And at the end, I'll open it up to any questions and discussion. Yesterday, let me ask you to raise your hand if you have your camera on. Did you download and look at the course curriculum? Raise your hand if you did that. There's one of you, two, three. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of be going through that. If you have not downloaded that and you want it, go back. You should be able to pick that up and download that even after the class. Does that sound right, Brent? Okay, Brent's saying yes. So you should be able to go back and thank you, and download that if you want to see some information. I also have a document that I took to Bo on the in-person firearms classes. It's kind of an introductory document. I had a computer crash. I don't think I lost it. I need to try to find that, but I don't mind to email that to you as well. It's just some information I put together. It was mostly involving handguns, but a lot of the safety applies throughout all the firearm field. So let's start from the kind of the beginning of, you don't have a gun, you don't know what you want, but you know you want to take or get involved in either hunting, shooting, or whatever. If you ever talk to someone or go to a gun shop and say, what kind of a gun do I need to hunt deer? And they say, oh, the perfect gun is this. And they answer your question directly with one particular make and model. I can assure you that person truly doesn't have a good understanding of hunting and individuals and the differences that we all have, right? It's interesting to say that we are all the same in terms of human beings, but we are all very different in terms of size and stature and physiology. So we all are going to be needing different tools, different size tools for the job of hunting or fishing or whatever we're doing. The first definition that you have to make for yourself is, what do I want to use this firearm for? Do I want to use it for defense? Do I want to use it to hunt? Do I want to use it for target practice? Maybe competition, okay? Those things you have to ask yourself. Once you have that definition, you can move forward in terms of trying to select a particular firearm. Just to kind of give you an idea, you can use a pistol or handgun. You can use a rifle. You can use a shotgun for all three of the uses, which would be self-defense, hunting, or sports. You can use any of them. It's your choice. So then you have to kind of narrow down. You can hunt with a pistol. You can hunt with a rifle, you can hunt with a shotgun. You can hunt deer with any of those. If you were going to hunt with a shotgun, you would need a slug. If you were going to hunt with a pistol, you need to practice and be a really good shot. But that also applies to rifles and shotguns as well. So there's where you need to start. Once you decide, and let's pick deer hunting, I want to go deer hunting and I want a rifle. What do I need to have? And it's a good question. And it's often a question that takes a long time to truly determine the exact rifle that you need. The biggest factor in a rifle choice is going to be really the recoil and how much recoil do you want to tolerate while you're practicing shooting your rifle. And then also when you're out in the field hunting. Fish and Wildlife, their requirements for a rifle to hunt in Kentucky is it must be a center fire rifle. And if that doesn't make sense, let me pull the camera closer. A center fire rifle, let me find the camera. If you see this little primer, this little silver spot right here, that's the primer. The firing pin hits that, and that's what makes the shell go off. So this would be a center fire cartridge. The other cartridge choice would be a rim fire, which you cannot hunt deer with. And if you notice, there is no primer in the middle of this little 22 cartridge. It's what is called a rim fire. So anywhere around this rim, the rifle can hit that rim and cause the cartridge to go off. Fish and Wildlife does not allow rim fire cartridges for hunting deer. Okay, let me show you two different shells here. These are both center fire cartridges, which means you could hunt deer with either one of these cartridges in the state of Kentucky. This is a little tiny 22 Hornet. It would kill a deer, but you would have to be an almost expert shot placement at getting a deer harvested and not causing it a lot of pain and suffering during that harvest because it's very tiny, okay? Really nice headshot. You could take a deer down with this, but you would have to be very good at what you're doing. This, on the other hand, is a 7mm Magnum shell. It's very large, it's very powerful. It'll take down a deer easily. And quite frankly, it's a little bit of overkill, but it's also still a good cartridge. The larger the cartridge, the larger the caliber, the more effectively you can harvest an animal without causing them undue suffering. All right. I love hunting. I do not love killing. Okay. Obviously, if I want to harvest an animal, I've got to kill it. So that is a part I want to do very efficiently and very quickly, which means in terms of ethics, I need to know my ability to shoot. I need to pick the right shot, which means I might have to let a deer walk on if I don't have a good shot to take. And it also means I need to use a caliber that I can use to harvest that deer. I personally would never use this cartridge to hunt deer, ever, unless it was like a life and death and it's, you know, COVID killed us all and we're out in the woods and running from zombies and that's the only rifle I had. That's the only way I would hunt with that. Okay. Another one I do hunt with this, it's a 308 cartridge. You can see the difference in size. But what's all this mean? Why don't you just go buy the biggest rifle you can get and go harvest your deer? Because the larger the bullet is and the faster it flies, the more recoil you will feel. All right. This cartridge, you would feel a lot of recoil. This 22 Hornet, you would barely feel if you shot it. So the Hornet's a sweet little gun to shoot, but it doesn't hurt. The 7mm is a pretty painful gun to shoot if you have to shoot it over and over again. Okay. I do not like sighting a scope in with a rifle this big because it takes a few shots and it'll punish you after a while. So what could a beginning shooter shoot that would be large enough to be ethical and small enough to be tolerable? Most people except that a 243 is a good caliber to hunt with or to start with. I know Fish and Wildlife has quite a few of them. A lot of people will hunt with them. They don't have near the recoil of a 30-06 or a 7mm Magnum or 300. And it would probably be a good place for you to start. You could use a 223, but the smaller that cartridge gets, the better you need to be at shot placement. Okay, Brent's a 223 hunter, but he's shot for a long time. Okay, I don't have a problem with Brent shooting that because he knows where to hit the deer and he knows his limitations of when he should and shouldn't take a shot. All right, so the smaller you get, the more ethical you almost have to become, because it gets more important to take a deer humanely. What do I mean by caliber? I'll explain that real quick if you don't know. You'll hear someone say, I said 243, all right? And if you actually look at that in print, there's a dot. It's a decimal 243. That 243 is the fraction of an inch, okay? So a 243 is 0.24 inches, 2.243 precisely, but it's almost a quarter of an inch. If you look at, you've heard probably about the 50 BMG cartridge the military shoots. It's 0.50. That is a 1/2 inch diameter cartridge, okay? More than most of us want to actually shoot, okay? The 7mm Magnum, that's European, obviously we're talking millimeters. If you convert from millimeters into inches, it's 0.28. So this would be like a 28 caliber rifle shell if you use the caliber as opposed to the 7mm. Cartridges created in Europe usually are millimeters. You've all heard of a 9mm pistol. So we have the 6mm rifles. So there's different ways to look at it, but all of those are just the definition of the width of the bullet. All right. A 30-06 is a 30 caliber, which is 0.30. So it's 0.3 of an inch. All right. I know I'm covering this stuff fast. It'll be recorded. Hopefully you can go back and take a look at this if you want, or again, call me, because I'm just trying to hit the high points and get as much information to you as possible.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Sorry, I've got to jump off and take the roster for the next class.
Okay.
You got my phone number, right?
Yes, sir.
If something screws up and it stops recording or something, call me or text me or whatever, and I'll jump back on and see if I can troubleshoot.
Excellent. It's still recording, so.
We're about to find out if it's going to stay that way.
That's right. Thanks.
Everybody have fun. Thanks.
Right. It still says it's recording, so hopefully we're good. Hopefully you can go back and take a look at this again later. So that's kind of a quick definition of what caliber is. It's basically the size of that bullet, all right? The bigger the bullet, usually the easier it is to harvest an animal humanely. The smaller that bullet, the better you would have to be. Okay, so this little guy, most of you may have seen it, is a 22 long rifle. Whoops. It is the rimfire cartridge that I showed you this would be illegal to hunt with in Kentucky. A lot of poachers will actually use this round to harvest deer illegally. They use it because it's quiet and it does not attract a lot of attention. So this is capable of killing a deer. But again, the smaller it is, the better you have to be at shot selection and shot placement. All right. So, and don't hunt with this. I'm just telling you that illegal people hunt with them and they do harvest deer with them. So it's possible. You just have to be better at what you're doing with the rifle. So my suggestion ultimately, if you don't have a rifle but want to get a rifle and get into hunting, find a mentor, because they will let you shoot their rifles and it'll give you an idea of what do I want to shoot if I want to get into hunting. They can also take you hunting if they're willing, but try to find someone that will let you shoot various rifles. You might be able to handle a 25-06 or maybe even a 30-06. But if you don't like the recoil, then stay with like a 243. It'll be a little bit easier on your shoulder when you shoot. So find a mentor if you can. And if you need help finding a mentor, contact Fish and Wildlife or me. There's a good possibility we can find someone to help you. And again, if you're near Frankfurt, I'm willing to help you. I've got a range here at my house, and I don't care to let you shoot different rifles to see what you think. But that's kind of a quick and dirty on rifles. Now, there's a couple of different types I'll talk about. One of them is an older style. It's a lever action. It's what you would see a lot in the cowboy movies. It's not as prevalent in the fields and in the woods today as it was 20 or 30 years ago. A lot of people used a lever action rifle. And give me just a second while I move this all around. So this is a lever action rifle. If you ever saw the show The Rifleman, this is basically the same rifle that he carried minus the scope. Okay. Let me say a quick word about scopes. I use them. I do not hunt open sights because as I get older, my vision is changing, right? Scopes don't help you shoot better, but they definitely help you see better, okay? Especially in states that have restrictions. In Pennsylvania, you have a number of antler points on one side. So you have to have a scope powerful enough to be able to count, do I have 3 points on one side of this deer's head? And brow tines don't count. So you've got to have either really good binoculars or a really good scope to be able to determine if a deer is legal. But they will help you see better. Okay, a lever action, basically, I'm trying to get my shirt out of this because it's kind of in the way. There we go. So this is the lever, right? When I pull the lever down, you can see the bolt right here open up. That will eject an empty cartridge you just shot. And when you close the bolt up, it will load a new cartridge from the magazine, which is this bottom tube. This is where your extra ammo sits inside the lever action rifle. Okay. So it's a fine rifle. A lot of times they would be in 30 caliber. So there would be a little bit of recoil to them, but they're a small, light rifle that works well in brush at short distances. This is not a 300, 400 yard rifle. This is more of about 100 yard, maybe 150 yard, depending on your ability to shoot with it. Okay. The reason it's not as accurate as a bolt action rifle is the lever system that ties then locks this bolt. See, when you run the lever forward and the bolt locks into place, and that holds the cartridge really tight when you fire, the lever system does not lock up as tight as a bolt action rifle. So you lose a little bit of accuracy there. But again, it's still capable out to 100 yards, maybe 150. Okay. I'll show you the bolt action rifle now. If you go into a gun shop, you'll see the bolt action rifle is the most prevalent form of rifles. So this is the bolt, right? And I'm using my hand to open and close it. That would be locked into place. I raise it up, I pull it back. This would kick out an empty shell, and when I push the bolt forward, it would pick up a new shell. The shells on this one sit right down here, and they push straight down into the magazine. All right. So when I empty it, a new one pops up. When I close the bolt, it loads a new round into the chamber. And when it locks down, as I said a second ago, it locks up really tight. So you have a lot more accuracy out of a bolt action rifle, typically, than you would out of a lever action. This one, as you notice, is also stainless steel, right? And it's got a synthetic stock. The advantages to those two is that they are not affected by rain and weather the way a wooden stock would be with a blue barrel. The drawback, if you notice, it's bright and shiny, right? That kind of shines and the sunlight will glint off of it. So I'm not super fond of having this in the woods on a really sunny day because it kind of, you sort of stick out. You're going to go in wearing camouflage and an orange vest and hat, then have this bright, shiny barrel glinting around in the sun. So great in adverse weather, not necessarily the best in nice sunny weather. That's a bolt action rifle. There are other variations of rifles. Some of them are single shot rifles. There's some different styles, but those two are the main rifles that you would find available to buy in a sporting goods store, at Cabela's, at a hunting shop. Would be a bolt action or a lever action rifle. Both of those are available in multiple cartridges. The bolt action has the most. All right. I do not think, to my recollection, there is a 243 in a lever action rifle. So you would probably have to get a bolt action if you want to start with that caliber range. We'll talk real quick about shotguns. If you want to go hunt birds, turkey, quail, dove, pheasant, chuckers, depending on what you want to shoot as a bird, you would want a shotgun, because they don't shoot, well, they can shoot a single projectile as a slug if you wanted to use a shotgun to hunt deer, but typically you will use bird shot, which shoots a column of shot that expands and helps you get the bird. Okay, now this is a pump action shotgun. So if you see the bolt right here, as I bring it back, the bolt opens, it would throw out an empty shell. When I push the bolt forward, it would load a fresh shell, and the magazine is right here. There's a tube here that you feed from the bottom, so it would go right up in there. So again, when I pump it, the empty goes out, I load it, the new shell comes in, and it's ready to shoot. Just so you know, if you hunt with a shotgun in Kentucky, you are limited to only 3 rounds in the gun, period. That means 2 can be in the chamber, 2 can be in the magazine, 1 can be in the chamber. So if Fish and Wildlife officers come out, if you can put 3 shells up in this tube magazine, you're going to get a ticket. Okay. They make plugs that go in the tube magazine so that you put the plug in and it will only accept 2 shells up in the magazine. So if you hunt with one of these, make sure you've got a plug in it. You can improvise. I've been out in the field and forgot my plug. You can cut a stick and just keep putting in the magazine till you get the stick right, so it only takes 2 shells. Totally fine. It doesn't matter, but the gun cannot accept 3 shells up inside the magazine. Now, this is a basic Remington 870. All right, so I can use this to hunt a variety of birds based on removing a choke out of the barrel. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going to show you what these chokes do and how they help you to hunt various types. So this is the choke I just pulled out. This is, whoops, that's the choke I pulled out. This is another one. I've got a couple more in this choke container. So what do? If you're going to hunt a turkey and you want to shoot them at longer distances, because the farther you can get a turkey, the better, simply because they're really crazy smart birds in the woods, right? They see well. If you move a little bit, a lot of times they'll take off, and they can be hard to actually harvest. My father had shot turkeys that fell over, got up, flew away, and he never got the bird, okay? So they can be frustrating. So you need a fairly dense shot pattern that will go a long way. They make a choke called a turkey choke, and what it does, this part up here tightens down smaller and smaller and smaller. The smaller this opening is, the more dense that shot column is when it comes out of the gun. If it's more open, then when the shot column comes out, it spreads out faster and farther. All right, so based on the choke, a super full turkey choke will get you out to about 40 yards, maybe 50, depending on the gun. If you're going to hunt something like dove or quail, you want to have more of an open pattern because it gives you a chance to hit the bird, but also a really dense pattern that hits a dove is really going to probably ruin a lot of the meat because you get too many shot pellets in it. So you want more of an open pattern on a small bird. Plus they fly crazy. I mean, I don't know if y'all hunted doves, but them things are like little MiG fighters flying around. They're just incredible. And when they start getting shot at and they realize it's hunting season, they're little acrobats in the sky. So they can be a challenge. It's a fun hunt because I know a group of guys that play poker until a bird flies over, then chips and tables fly and they get up and shoot. When the birds are gone, they sit down and play poker again. So, you know, you can have a lot of fun. It's a good social time. You can shoot birds, eat really wonderful tasting dove meat. So it's a fun hunt. But if you're taking your shotgun, you want to make sure you get the right choke. Okay. You can find that information on chokes online in terms of what they suggest and when. I'm not going to get into that because we've only got an hour and a half and we're a half hour into it already. Just know that on a standard hunting shotgun, you can switch out your chokes to give you a different shot column based on what you want to hunt. This is a 12 gauge shotgun. You can also hunt very well with a 20 gauge, which will have less recoil. You can even hunt with a 410 gauge, which will be even less recoil, because the 410, in terms of size of how much shot is put out, 410 has less, then comes a 20, then a 12 gauge. And if you went farther up to larger shells, you can get an actual 10 gauge and an 8 gauge. Very few 8 gauges left because they're punishing to shoot. No one wants them, so it's hard to find an 8 gauge shotgun. Even 10 gauges are kind of hard to find because they're not common. People don't want to shoot them. 12 gauge is usually sufficient. But a lot of people hunt with 20 gauges. So again, just like in the rifles with a different calibers and different felt recoil, shotguns are the same way. Okay. And I would give you the same advice before you run out and buy one. If you don't already have it, find a mentor and shoot one, see what you think about it. I can assure you in most cases, most any of us in this class could shoot a 12 gauge once you get used to shooting. Okay. Physiology, unless you have an injury, most of us can handle it, but you may not like it. So you go, yeah, I shot it, but I don't like it. I want to go to a 20 gauge, or I even want to go to a 410, then it's fine. So again, it's a choice, and you'll need some help sometimes trying to find someone to shoot their firearm. I'm not going to get too much into pistols, other to say you can hunt with them, but again, you have a really short barrel, a small sight radius. You can put a scope on a pistol, but it's even harder to hunt deer with a pistol. So it's something that I probably wouldn't recommend unless you've been hunting for a long time and you would like to try something a little more challenging. I would probably stick to a shotgun or a rifle. Let me show you a slug real quick. Okay, so you can hunt deer with a shotgun very well. Your range is limited. Let's see if I can show you this. Okay, so this is a 12 gauge shotgun slug. All this piece right here is one big, thick lead slug. Okay, it's actually very effective at hunting deer. Your range is decreased, but this will put a very large hole into an animal if you're trying to hunt it. And it will be a relatively ethical and quick kill because of the size of that bullet. It's really big. So you can effectively hunt deer with a shotgun. If you could only afford one gun, a pump shotgun offers you the ability to shoot slugs that will harvest deer, or shot which will harvest birds. Okay, you could do either. You just don't have the range. This slug is so heavy, it just doesn't have the distance. You can't get it fast enough to travel out to 200 or 300 yards to harvest something. So it's probably going to be less than 100 yards to hunt with one of these. Okay. Pistols, again, I don't really recommend those unless you've got the experience and you want to move up to something a little more challenging. And you also have bows and arrows if you wanted to attempt something more challenging to harvest deer. All right. Let me move on to a quick note about purchasing a firearm. In Kentucky, if you want to purchase a firearm from a private individual, it is totally legal just to give them the cash or a check and take the firearm. There's nothing else needed. You do not have to go register the sale. You do not have to go check that in at the sheriff's office. You have free, available, private to private sale inside the state of Kentucky. That includes handguns and long guns and rifles. I would not try to sell or purchase a handgun from someone out of state. Handguns across state line are looked at a little bit differently. You can purchase a rifle or a shotgun across state lines, but not pistols. If you go to a dealer, you're going to have to fill out the firearm form from the BATF, fill out your information. The gun store will call in a background check, and it's usually an instant check. They will give you an approval or disapproval right there on the phone. If you have a concealed carry license in Kentucky, they don't have to call your background check in. They can use the concealed carry license. They can do that because in order to get your concealed carry license, the state police does a deeper background check than the NCIS check that you would get if you purchase a firearm. Okay. So if you have your concealed carry license, you can walk in and give it to them. They'll take all the information off of it. They don't place a phone call. They just go ahead and complete the transaction. Do not go to a gun store and buy a gun for someone else. It's called a straw purchase. It is illegal. The reason it's illegal is because they don't know you might be buying that for someone who's not legally able to own it, and you're buying it for them and just giving it to them. Okay. There are some provisions for gifts if you want to buy a firearm as a gift, but I'm not an attorney and I can't practice law and I can't give you legal advice. I'll simply say, if you want to buy a firearm as a gift for someone, make sure you check into the local and state federal regulations before you do that. It can be done, but there's a process for it. But they just do not allow straw purchases, which is I'm going to go buy a firearm for Brent and give it to him. And in this case, like, we know Brent is legally able to own that gun, but it doesn't matter. All right. If Brent wants to buy it, he has to go buy it himself. I can't buy it for him. Okay. Let's talk quickly about safety. Anywhere you go, you'll get a list of safety rules. NRA has a lot of people have a different set of safety rules. Most of them are very similar, but some have more detail, some have more lists. The safety rules that I go by, I'm going to read them here. It's also in the information if you download the class. The first one is you have got to treat every gun like it's loaded. Okay? Hands down. There's no question. The reason is most people that accidentally shoot themselves with a gun, when they make their statement to law enforcement who do investigate, even if it's accidental firearm shot, when they make their statements, most of the time they say, but the gun was unloaded. Right? Which we all know is not true, because if it was unloaded, you wouldn't have shot yourself. What you meant to say was you thought the gun was unloaded, but it wasn't. It was loaded, and you treated it like it was unloaded. The behavior I want to instill is to get you to understand you need to treat this gun like it's loaded all the time, which means don't point the muzzle at somebody. Don't keep your finger on the trigger. Don't do all those silly things that you wouldn't do if you knew the gun was loaded. Okay. The second one is don't let the muzzle, that's the business end of a gun. That's where the violent stuff happens and the bullet comes out. That's the muzzle. Don't let that cover anything you're not willing to destroy. All right. That includes your feet, your toes, your cars, your TVs, your family, and your friends. Okay. When you're hunting with a group and you're walking through the woods, don't carry your muzzle where it's pointing to one of your buddies. All right. You don't want to go there. I skipped the story time in the beginning of this because I wanted to get more into it. But it'll be sufficient to say there have been many families that have had accidental shooting deaths in the field hunting, and it's ruined a long tradition of hunting, okay? Because a father killed a son, and it was an accident, and it was a tragic accident, but it was preventable. And in that family, hunting is no longer a tradition because nobody can stand to go in the woods and face the thought that the father shot and killed the son. on what should have been a very nice hunting afternoon. So you have to be cognizant or aware of where your muzzle is pointing all the time. And we have to remind each other, right? Because it happens to everybody. But when someone points a muzzle at you, just politely say, hey, watch your muzzle. And when they say it to you, don't put your lip out and get sad and offended. We all have to keep ourselves in line when it comes to firearm safety rules. Okay. The next one is keep your finger off of the trigger until you have a target and you're ready to shoot. So if you're in the woods hunting, your finger should never be on the trigger of that rifle or shotgun until you're actually ready to pull the trigger to harvest an animal. Okay. If you have a rifle and you want to hold it, your finger lives right here off the trigger. I usually keep it right along the frame. It never goes in this trigger guard until I'm ready to shoot something. If I hear a noise and I want to get ready, I may have my finger here and the gun still on safe, but my finger's ready. If I see an animal and I believe that I've got a shot, all I've got to do is use my thumb to push the safety forward, put my finger on the trigger, and I'm ready to fire. If the animal turns, goes back in the woods, my finger comes right off the trigger and the safety comes back on. All the time. Okay? You have to train yourself to do these things all the time. And you need to work with friends and family that hunt to make sure they're doing these things all the time. All right? Nothing will ruin a great day in the woods like an accidental discharge, even if nobody gets hurt. Okay? Because if you accidentally pull the trigger and put a bullet into the ground, you may have scared off that Boone and Crockett or Pope and Young deer, trophy deer that was just, beyond the tree lines in the woods. So it's never a good thing to have a negligent discharge. So keep your finger off that trigger till you're ready to shoot. The last rule is to know your target and what's beyond it. All right. If you have never hunted deer before, I can tell you from years of experience in many harvested animals, the bullet that went in one side of that deer came out the other side and then disappeared in the woods. All right. I have never recovered a bullet from a rifle in an animal that I've harvested. What that means is I need to know that when I shoot at that animal, what's on the other side of that animal and where's the bullet going. Don't shoot at animals on a ridge top. If you're down in the valley and you're looking up and there's an animal up on that ridge top and you shoot at it, the bullet goes through the animal. Where is that bullet going to come down on the other side of that ridge? If you don't know, don't take that shot. That's part of ethical hunting. Even if you don't injure a person, it's just really bad practice for hunters to put bullets through people's car windows or into their house, right? It gives us a really bad name. And while I'm more concerned with safety, we also know that hunting is under attack more and more every year, right? So protect yourself, protect other people, and protect their property by knowing what's on the other side of that target you're getting ready to shoot at. If you downloaded the material, you'll notice on one page, I went and bought a dowel rod and stuck it in the end of a pistol, and it's laying on the floor, and I took a picture of it. The idea behind that is if you can always in your mind envision a laser or a dowel rod that sticks out the end of your pistol or rifle or shotgun, that dowel rod or that laser should never cross another person. And that includes you and your body parts. Okay. I don't know if you've been in the woods much, but I have seen multiple hunters take a break, come back to camp for lunch, and they'll take the muzzle of their rifle, set it on basically the top of their boot, and hold the rifle upside down. They do that because, well, I've actually seen other hunters who put the butt of the rifle on the ground and will lay their hands on top of the muzzle like this, okay? And I see a couple of your faces. Yes, it is the stupidest thing I've ever seen, right? Because what we're going to do is nickname that guy Stumpy when both his hands fly off when the gun shoots, okay? And I know I'm making a joke there, but it is a really serious deal, all right? Don't put your hands over the muzzle. Don't put the muzzle over in your boot. They do that because it is very dangerous, just so you know, in the woods to have mud, rock, or leaves stuck in the end of your barrel. Because if you try to shoot a rifle with mud or something stuffed in the end of it, it could build up enough pressure to bulge the barrel, and the barrel ruptures. Not necessarily a deadly thing to you, but it's probably going to cause at least some minor injury to you in just terms of cuts and scrapes. It's going to ruin your rifle. You'll have to go buy another one. It may ruin the scope. And there is the possibility that you could sustain damage to your eyes if you're not wearing actual ballistic eyewear. You could damage your eyes just from little pieces of metal that fly out when the barrel ruptures, right? So in other words, if you're out in the woods and you drop your barrel in the ground and it goes nose first into the dirt, I would temporarily pause my hunting until I could go back somewhere, unload the gun, make sure the barrel was clean and empty before I went back out and hunted, right? Just so you know that. Same goes with a shotgun or a pistol. You got to keep those barrels empty of debris to avoid that. But, okay, back to the stupid stuff of putting the muzzle on your boot. They do that because when you put the muzzle on your boot, it keeps mud, dirt, rocks from getting stuck in the barrel. Of course, if the gun goes off, we'll call you stumpy because you lose your foot. So bad practice. All right, just don't do it. I advocate having a sling on your rifle. A sling to a rifle or shotgun is like a holster to a pistol. If you're tired of holding your rifle and you're standing around talking and chit-chatting, sling it over your shoulder. You can sling it muzzle up, you can sling it muzzle down, but at least you can rest your arms from holding the rifle and it be safe that way. So try to envision that laser or that dowel rod sticking out the end of your muzzle, regardless of what it is, right? And don't let that cover anybody else. Real quick into gun storage. There's all kinds of different gun locks out there. I've got a couple here to show you. Here's one. This is literally a bendable metal rod that goes through the barrel. It's designed to keep people from accessing and shooting this gun. Let me grab the other one. Here's the other one. Here's one that just locks around the trigger area. So even if someone got a hold of the gun, they would not be able to access the trigger to do anything with it. There are locks. If you buy a new gun, whether it's a pistol, rifle, or shotgun, it'll probably come with a lock built into it. And I'll show you real quick what I mean. Okay. As long as I can get this up to the camera. All right. So this right here, that right there, that little J-shaped hole right there. That J-shaped hole, where'd it go? Is designed to accept this little key. This is hard to show on the camera. I struggled with it yesterday. This is a J-shaped little key that I can put in there and turn it from safe to lock, okay? All of these type gun locks, including this one, these work very well if you're storing your guns at home to keep unauthorized people from accessing them. They do not work very well if you are using your firearm for self-defense in your home. Because they're kind of hard to get. If someone was breaking into your home, it can be kind of hard to get a small key in this hole. And I'm not trying to do that. There we go. Get this turned and get it off of the pistol, pull that out, and then get it ready to use if someone's breaking into your home. This little one here is the most horrible gun lock in the world if you're in a hurry, because it came with a pistol I bought and has this tiny little key that you have to put in these little holes and turn it. All it is a screw that unlocks and it'll open up. But those little things are so small, it's hard to keep in there and get it turning and right. So it works fine if you're storing a gun. It's not so great if you are keeping it and you might need it in the event of an emergency. I advocate somehow locking up your firearms at home. Okay. If you need something for defense, I would secure it, maybe not the same way I would secure something that's just being stored for hunting next fall or whatever. Okay. If we were live on the range at Bow, you would be introduced to this yellow bag. Okay. It's my first aid kit. And when I say first aid kit, I'm not talking about little cuts and scrapes. That's what Band-Aids are for. This is a kit. I was an EMT for a while, so I've got a little bit of medical knowledge. So there's a couple things that I keep in here. I'm not necessarily advocating that you go buy this stuff, but I will tell you why I keep it and what it's for. The first thing, obviously, I keep a rubber gloves, right, just for bloodborne pathogens. The other thing I also always keep is a CPR mask, because we lose more people to heart disease and heart attacks than we do to COVID or gunshots or anything else. So this is always good to have, especially at a bow weekend. We hope we never need it, but if we need it, we have it. I do keep a basic first aid kit for the boo-boo bunnies. If you cut yourself, you can put a little Neosporin on it, wrap a Band-Aid around it, and go back to shooting. Blisters, Band-Aids work well for blisters if you're shooting. So I have that in here as well. Sorry, this did not make it back in that bag after yesterday's class. This is just a large bandage, okay? So if somebody fell down and gashed their arm really bad, or if something stupid happened and somebody got shot, this is a large, thick, absorbent bandage, right? So I could tear this out of the package, slap it on a wound, put a lot of pressure on it, call 911 and get somebody to a hospital. But this will work for more than just gunshots, all right? If you're walking to the gun range and slip and crack your head open on a rock, this bandage will help take care of you. Okay, this is a tourniquet, right? If you've ever been around years ago and took CPR class, these were from the devil. Tourniquets were horrible. They could save your life, but you'll lose your limb and everything else. The only advantage of war is that we find better ways to treat victims. These particular tourniquets are designed so that you can apply them without losing a limb, okay? We've had soldiers in Iraq that had tourniquets put on them for more than 8 hours with no blood to the limb, and surgeons were able to get the limb back fully functioning, okay? And it's based on the design. If you wrap a belt around somebody or tie a string around them, they might lose their limb. If you use one of these tourniquets, there's a good chance they'll save it. And yes, I've never had to use one of these, but given the fact we've had a few active shooting in circumstances in the public, given the fact that I'm on a range, I usually always have a tourniquet around just in case. Pray to God I never have to use it, but if I do, I have it. And then the last one, and this gets a little more technical. If a person has a chest injury, okay, when you breathe, air goes in and out your lungs. If you have a chest injury, whether it's from a bullet, whether it's because you slipped and fell and hit a stick that went through your chest or whatever, if you got a hole in your chest, it's called a sucking chest wound. The problem is when air goes in your chest and not your mouth, it's a bad thing. It puts pressure on the inside of your body. These bandages are designed to stick on to skin with one corner that's open, so it allows air to escape but not come in. They call those sucking chest wounds. Again, these two items I don't ever expect to use, because in bow, I will be honest, I have had incredibly awesome students. We've never had anything bad happen because people listen, they do what they're told. So I've never expected to use these, but I wear my seatbelt because I might be in an accident, not because I expect to be in one. So I do have these things on the range. Okay. What do you do to protect yourself normally on the range? Eye and ear protection all the time. Even if you're shooting a 22 rifle, people go, well, they're quiet, so I don't wear hearing protection when I shoot 22s. The decibel levels of a 22 is still enough to damage hearing, okay? My dad and my uncle both are deaf almost because growing up, they didn't have hearing protection. Nobody wore it. They didn't wear it. they damage their hearing. So a couple of things. If you've seen the ear plugs, these work well. I do want to show you how to properly insert these, because I have seen a myriad of ways that people have put these in their ears and they don't protect you in some of the ways. I've seen them put them in backwards. The part that sticks out of your ear was inside where they just stuck them in. I've seen them where they stuffed them in vertically and just stuffed them like that, which does not protect your hearing. It's kind of crazy. The proper way to insert one of these is to roll it up in your fingers. And it's good to have clean fingers so you don't get a bunch of dirt and stuff in your ear. But roll it up and it stays rolled up for a while. If you're going to put it in your left ear, take your right hand, put it over your head and pull your ear up. That opens up your ear canal. Put the earplug in it and let it go. It'll expand on its own and it will protect your hearing. And I'm going to pull that out because if I leave it in, I'll start talking louder because I can't hear as well. They work really well. We have over-the-ear muffs. They're passive and active. These are active, which means I can turn them on, and what they will do is amplify normal talking. So if I'm teaching a class, if you had these on, you'd be able to hear my voice at a normal level, but it cuts off the sound over a certain decibel. So it's safe to shoot because you don't hear the loud noise of the shot, but you do hear normal talking, okay? The passive ones are just muffs. They don't have any electronics. They're just ear muffs. If you ever shoot at an indoor gun range, put these two together, okay? Put the foam earplugs in, cover them up with ear muffs, because indoor gun ranges contain a lot of noise, okay? It's very loud. Put both. Foams first, then put the earmuffs over top, protect your hearing. The other one is eye protection, okay? Please wear eye protection, right? Probably none of us have ever shot a gun that's blown up in our face, right? But it's like a seatbelt. We wear eye protection in case it happens, not because we expect it to, all right? There's a Z78 rating. I recommend when you're looking for safety glasses to shoot, look for that Z78. It is a rating that's basically a higher protection level than just, you can buy eye protection for like weed eating the yard, right? It probably won't have the same level of protection as the Z78 would. So make sure you get those. Champion, that is a brand that makes some really awesome eye protection that will go over glasses, most glasses, but they also fit well if you don't have glasses. They are, I think, probably the top of the line. They cost about $14 a pair. They're my favorites. I've already got 2 pair, and when I get a chance to order them, I'm going to order enough that if I come to a bow class, I can share them and spread them around, because I think they're that superior in terms of comfort and fit than any other eye protection I've worn. Okay. All right, I think, what time? Yep, we're about 4 o'clock. So we're about on schedule with yesterday. So what I'm going to do, let me look at the questions that I got. And I realize that some of these questions may have been from yesterday's class. Is there any, let me see. All right. I think you can unmute yourself. Do this. That's mute all. No, I don't want to do that. Allow, okay. You should be allowed to unmute yourself. Let's start with this. If you have any questions so far, go ahead and unmute yourself and let me know, or type it in the chat, because I want to make sure to answer your questions. This is a very short period of time to jam pack a lot of information, and I've covered it pretty quick. So are there any questions? I'd ask you to raise your hand, but I can only see 3 of you or 4 of you. The rest of you I can't see. So are there any questions? Okay. Okay, what's, this is from Alice. What's the range of a bolt action rifle? And I'm assuming, are you talking the distance that I can shoot, or, yeah, okay.
Yes, yes.
Great,
You gave
all right.
you gave the lever action, but not the bolt.
Okay, so It varies, and I'll explain what that means. I've got a 308 rifle that I shoot and have shot on 1,000-yard ranges. Okay, I can hit a target that's 18 inches wide, 30 inches tall at 1,000 yards. Only with that rifle, and only when the wind is perfect. I'm not that great of a shot. But so a lot of calibers you could, if the rifle's set up right, hit something 1,000 yards away. For most hunting purposes, practically speaking, depending on the scope you buy and put on the rifle, you're looking at anywhere from 50 yards out to maybe 300 if you're really comfortable with your ability to shoot. You can certainly go a little farther depending on what caliber. You could probably, I know people long range hunt out to 400 and 500 and 600 yards, but these are people that practice shooting year round so that they can challenge themselves with that long range shot. Personally, I have no desire to shoot at a deer 500 yards away. To me, a little bit of wind can alter that bullet enough that I might wound the animal and not hit it. Okay, not my cup of tea. I'm not beating up anybody that wants to try it. It's just not my deal. I'm a meat hunter. I want to eat it. And the challenge is, if I want a challenge, I'd switch over to bolt action rifle and, a rifle with no scope, and make the distance come into about 50 yards. But I'm not going to do the 1,000-yard, or 500, 600-yard shot. So practically speaking, 300 yards be your answer if you've practiced and done your job. Oh, a quick note about scopes. I've hunted with people that were in an area with lots of deer and they had lots of shots and never hit anything. Okay, so we were in the woods. It's not a shooting range, so we took a little piece of tape, stuck it on a tree, dropped back to about 60 or 70 yards, shot at that little piece of tape, and it didn't even hit the tree. Okay, so the question is, did you sight your rifle in? And the answer was, what? Okay, he bought the rifle. It had a scope on it when he bought it, and he assumed it's ready to go hunting. Okay, that is not the case. Whether you mount the scope or you have someone do it, or whether it comes mounted from the factory, you have to verify that the crosshairs are where you want them to be. And oftentimes they need to be adjusted. You can adjust windage left and right, and you can adjust elevation up and down. So anytime you hunt, if you are an ethical hunter, you need to go to a range before season and verify your rifle hits where you want it to. I do not go hunting without shooting this 7mm rifle before I go. And the reason is, I know that my scope is sighted in, but if the rifle falls on the ground or gets jolted hard enough or something hits the scope, it could knock those sights off a little bit. Right? Now, I have never had the sights on this scope or the crosshairs get knocked off, because when it's not hunting, that rifle is in a safe. And it's not being jostled around, but I need to know for myself that it's still sighted in. So I highly recommend, if you want to be a good hunter for season, take your rifle out, shoot it, make sure it's sighted in. Okay. And that's where larger calibers are a little bit of a problem. When I first mounted the scope on this 7mm Magnum, my shoulder was really actually painful. It wasn't sore, it was hurting by the time I shot about 20 rounds through it to make sure the scope was where I wanted it. It was hurting pretty bad. Now, to go out and shoot one or two rounds in the woods is totally fine, but sighting it in is where it gets difficult, because you often have to shoot a lot to get it sighted in. But you can break that up over several days. You don't have to do it all at once. But okay, good question on the distance. So hang on a second. What is this? See. So that's the distance. Okay, yeah. Practically speaking, out to 200 to 300 yards for most bolt action rifles. Okay, when you say a Remington 700, what does that mean? All right, so a Remington 700 is a model of bolt action rifle. That model, the Remington 700, comes in various calibers. You can get it in a 30-06. I believe it comes in a 7mm Remington Magnum. I'm trying to think, because I don't know all this off the top of my head. but it does come, I think it comes in a 25-06. I don't know if it comes in a 243. But that's what you are talking about with a Remington 700. If I'm hunting, how much ammunition do you take? It depends on where I'm hunting. If I go up to what we call the big woods, and it's paper mill property up in north central Pennsylvania, you can literally walk 5 to 6 miles through the woods to where you're hunting, okay? Which means I'm not coming out for lunch. I'm not coming out if it rains. I'm coming out at the end of the day or when I get cold enough or wet enough that I decide to quit hunting. If I'm going up there, I'm usually taking, let's see, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, usually about 15 to 20 rounds of ammunition, okay? I never have shot that much in the woods. If I'm hunting, we've got family property in southeastern Pennsylvania. It's only 170 acres. I can easily walk back to hunting camp at lunch if I had to get more ammo. I usually don't. I carry 4 in the rifle and usually about 2 or 3 more in my pockets. And I've never had to use what's in my pockets. Here's the thing. I can tell you, I showed you this black and stainless rifle a few minutes ago. That rifle has never missed a deer in 20 years. Never. Now, am I bragging that I'm a great shot? Nope. I'm bragging that I know what shot to take. All right. And that's where I would hope that you get. I have passed up shots with that rifle, but I've never missed a deer because I take a shot that I'm pretty confident I can get. So what that means is I don't use more than, most I've ever used was 3 rounds of ammunition. And it's because I've got the biggest deer of my life on the wall in another room in there, and I shot it and I hit it, but it took off running. So the second shot went totally wild, hit nothing. The third I'm sorry, I used 4 shots. The third shot, I hit it again, but it was heading off our property. So the way all that goes is the last person to put the deer down owns it. And I wanted that deer because I've never seen a big deer like that in the woods. So as it crossed the hill and went up the other side, it laid down. And when it laid down, I got a really good spot, really good rest on a tree, and I shot it in the head just to get it out of its misery. 4 rounds was the most I've ever used. And if you look at the average, it's only going to be 1, or mathematically speaking, it would be like 1.4, just because I've used more than 1, but rarely ever do I take more than 2 shots. Okay. Would I use a 7.62 by 39 round for deer hunting in standing timber? This cartridge is a 308. It's a 30 caliber, okay? A 7.62 by 39 is very, very similar to this round. So yes, I would use it to hunt. What I would prefer to have is a soft tip, all right? This bullet, sorry, I'm fighting with my camera. It's a solid point. If I were to shoot this at a deer, this bullet would go in one side and come out the other side super fast and not do a great deal of damage. So what I want, if you can notice on this, when you see that little lead tip on that bullet, it's called a soft point. It's also similar to that plastic tip, which is a ballistic tip. Both of these two are designed to push back and expand that bullet so it makes a larger hole when it goes through the animal, right? Which is a good thing because, again, it makes a more humane harvest of the animal. As long as the 7.62 has a lead tip like this, absolutely, it would be a fine hunting cartridge. But if your bullets are just these solid tips like this, I personally wouldn't use those bullets. I would find a different type. I know that soft tips are available for the 7.62 by 39, so I would look for them and test, make sure you can shoot it, make sure you know how the rifle works. But I would absolutely use that to hunt with. Okay, so, all right, that's the model type. Yeah, Remington 700 is a model type. We still have about 20 minutes. Is there any questions or discussions? Trying to think of anything that we could cover to help you understand some stuff. Again, please take my number down. You can scroll to the top of the chat. Give me a call whenever. Let me tell you how to call me, though. Leave a voicemail, because I will not answer your phone calls. I have my phone set up with a separate ring. If you're not programmed, that ring comes in and I will not answer it because it's usually spam. So leave a voicemail and I will call you back. And give me just 1 second to plug this computer in. Yesterday it lasted, it's about to die. So be right back. I'd hate to lose the class because my computer died. Okay, I'm back and we're plugged in, so we got lots of juice. All right, do we have any other questions? Info, my number, okay, so let me I'll type this number in again, because you would have to scroll up to the top to see it. I'll put my name and 74, okay. Oops, sorry, that only went out to JL. That was, send that to everyone. Okay, you should see it there. Are there different gauges for muzzle loaders? Absolutely. Muzzle loaders are a little bit unique in terms of whether it's a primitive muzzle loader or a modern inline muzzle loader. The modern inline muzzle loaders, you can buy a 50 caliber, right? And if you remember back to a few minutes ago, 50 caliber is a 1/2 inch diameter bullet, right? 0.5. But you can buy bullets that are actually 45 caliber, and the bullet actually sits in a plastic sabot. So the plastic is 50 caliber, but the bullet is 45. And you can ram that down the barrel, and the plastic seals up the extra space so that you can shoot a smaller bullet, which will give you a little more speed and have a little less recoil. If you're talking, you can also shoot a straight 50 caliber as well if you want to do that, but you can also shoot the reduced 45 caliber. They can come in 45 caliber. They can actually come, there's very few left, but you can get them in 30 caliber. Most of them are going to be a 45 or 50. If you're talking the primitive muzzle loaders, most of those will only shoot round balls. And I will tell you, if you shoot a round ball at a deer, one of the drawbacks are they don't often leave a big blood trail, right? If you need to track the animal. Modern bullets and the speed of them, if you've not hunted, a bullet will go in the front side and it'll basically go into the animal and make a hole about the size of the bullet. On the back side, it has a very large hole because the speed of these high velocity bullets push liquid pressure. Okay, so it builds up that pressure and it almost explodes out the backside. And I'm not trying to make this gross, but this is what happens. So they leave pretty good blood trails if you have to track the animal. The old primitive muzzle loaders that just shoot a round lead ball, they're a slower velocity. So oftentimes they poke in the front side, they poke out the back side. They don't blow out the backside. So you don't get near as much blood. All right. I've shot them. My uncle has shot them. My brother have shot them. And sometimes you just have to look at the direction the deer was going and track them down. And then, you know, we've been able to find them. So they didn't suffer a whole lot, but they weren't as easy to track as with a modern rifle. Okay. But yeah, there are different gauges of muzzle loaders. I would recommend, if you wanted to get into muzzle loading, to consider a 50 caliber simply because you can shoot a 45 caliber out of it. And then if you ever wanted to jump up to a 50 caliber, you could do that as well. If you buy a 45 caliber, then you're limited to that, and that might be fine. So that's just a choice you'd have to make. So, you know, I was reading here, it says, I've been around firearms all my life, but rarely shoot targets, so I haven't learned enough. And that's fine. Here's one of the things that I think makes shooting fun and you can learn a lot. Get a 22 rifle. Wear hearing protection, please, and eye protection. But there's no recoil to this little bullet, hardly at all. And they're relatively quiet. They won't offend your neighbors as much as a, 30-06 would. But the marksmanship required to shoot a 22 is the same marksmanship that's required to shoot a large caliber rifle. Okay. You can learn a lot about marksmanship with a 22. And they're just fun. They're much cheaper to shoot. There's virtually no recoil. So if you want to target shoot and start to learn the processes of good trigger management, good sight alignment through your scope or through iron sights, start with a 22 and build up from there. And when you build up, you gain confidence. I know a young lady right now, and she weighs about 90 pounds soaking wet and is about 4 foot nothing tall. And she can shoot a 45 caliber pistol as well or better than any man I have ever seen in my life. It is simply because she has shot a lot and she's confident in being able to control and handle the recoil of that pistol. Most of you all can do the same thing if you spend the time on the range. Your body, your mind, all those things will eventually build up to and become accustomed to the recoil. And there's a limit, right? And for me, this limit is 20 rounds of a 7mm Magnum, and my shoulder's done, right? And I'm starting to lose my ability to shoot well because I'm thinking too much about the pain of the next round. So there's always a limit, but you can build up, and you can probably go a little higher than you might think as long as you spend the time practicing and working on it on the range. Are there any other questions? We've still got about 15 minutes.
So you said there's recoil. Do they ever sell anything to put over your shoulder to kind of mute that?
Yep, absolutely. A couple of different things. And I'll show you one here. So with this rifle, and they know this is a big caliber, this butt plate here is rubber and it's squishy. It's kind of hard to see on the camera. You can't see my fingers, but it's digging in, okay? That's designed to absorb energy, okay? You can buy hunting clothes that will have a patch built into the shoulder. A lot of shotgunners that shoot skeet and trap wear those, just because if they're out shooting 12 gauge at trap all day long, they want to protect that shoulder some, so you can do that. Now with this 7mm, what I do, I just improvised a little shooting pad for this rifle if I'm going to shoot it a lot. And I've got a little piece of carpet about that wide and about this long, and I fold it up 2 or 3 times, stick it on my shoulder, stick the rifle up against it, and that little piece of carpet absorbs a lot of that energy. So, and thank you for bringing that question up, because it lets me kind of reiterate something. I can shoot the 7mm Magnum in the woods all day long, and my shoulder never hurts, okay? And even when I've shot deer without hearing protection, and by the way, I wear hearing protection now most of the time when I hunt, just because every time you fire a gun, you will lose a tiny bit of hearing. And you may never notice it, but you still lose a tiny bit. So now I hunt with hearing protection. But when I didn't, or if for some reason I forget it and I don't have it, you don't hear the shot. You really don't feel the recoil. And it's because your mind is so like mistletoe and lock on making this shot right. You're focused on the crosshairs, which you should be. You're focused on a really good trigger pull, which you should be. You're focused on the animal. You're trying to get everything right. You go into what they call auditory exclusion. You don't really hear that round. Now your ears will still suffer a little bit of damage, but you won't notice it. Whereas if you're on a range and you shot this same rifle without hearing protection, your ears would probably ring for a while, okay? I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling. I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, okay. but you don't feel the recoil. Where the recoil will be a problem is just going out to the range and shooting 4, 5, 6 times to make sure your rifle is still sighted in for that deer season. Or when you initially mount the scope and you have to sight it in. That's when a larger caliber is going to become more of a problem for anybody, okay? But in the woods, it's usually not too bad. All right. Any other questions? We've still got about 10 minutes. Any good hunting stories? Anybody hunted yet? No?
The closest I've got is driving home from northeastern Pennsylvania on the first day of deer hunting season. There were trucks everywhere off the side of the highway, right at the exit.
There's lots of deer on the roads too, wasn't there?
No, not too many.
No?
It was just more the trucks I saw had pulled off instead of like
Oh,
driving off to the park. They were
Yes.
on the basically just right off the side of
Yes.
the road at the exit.
They do that a lot. What she's talking about is the hunters, if their farm is near an interstate, they'll just pull off the side of the road and get out and walk in the woods and hunt there. Rather than walking a long way and dragging the deer, they just park on the side of the road and hunt in the woods. So yeah, West Virginia's bad about that. And it can get a little dicey having all those trucks everywhere. So, but yeah. I don't know. Was anybody was anybody at the campfire last night?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Alice was. And all right. Do you say, is it Ciara? Is that right? How do you pronounce your name?
It's Sierra.
Sierra. Okay. All
Yep.
right. So you two were on. I don't know if y'all heard my story about the new hunter. I'll tell the rest of you real quick, unless you, please interrupt me if you have a question. Wait a minute. Okay. So, okay. I had a new hunter, and he didn't know a lot about the firearm, didn't know where he was going, and I was asked to take him and put him in a good spot, which I did. The part of the story I didn't share last night is he wasn't sure how to load the gun, so he said, "Can you show me how?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Let's go ahead and get to where we're going, and we'll get you loaded up, and get you in a good spot, and then you'll be ready." So we got down to where we were going to leave him in his hunting stand, and he pulled out a box of ammunition which has 20 rounds in it. So I thought, well, he's good. He's set for ammo. So he hands me the box, and I noticed it was very light. And I opened up the box. He had 3 rounds. So you asked how many rounds do you hunt with? He was hunting with 3. So I knew how many chances he was going to get to shoot a deer, and then he would be done. So we loaded up his 3 rounds, and I showed him how to get the rifle ready and safety and all that. Talked about what to do. So, you know, if you do ever go deer hunting and you shoot the deer, focus on a good shot, get a good humane shot so that animal doesn't suffer. But once you've made that shot, if you don't have a follow-up shot, watch where the deer goes. If they run, you need to watch the direction they go. It gives you an idea of where to start tracking the animal, where to look for a blood trail, or where to look for hoof prints in the ground. So I explained some of that to him. And so I went over the ridge. I was in a real thick area. I couldn't see much. So I was just kind of kicking back. I've hunted enough. I really like seeing somebody else get a deer for the first time. So I didn't care much about my hunt that day. I was just crossing my fingers he would get an opportunity. So about 8:30, 8:45, he shot once. A few minutes later, he shot again. And then he didn't use up his 3rd round. So I waited about a half hour till things calmed down, and I snuck up over the hill, and I saw him walking around. He finally saw me and waved me down there, and he was looking at the ground. And I thought, okay, so he's looking for a blood trail or something. He had a really nice, it was 8 or 10 points, I can't remember now, but it was a big rack laying on the ground. And like all hunters, let's hear the story. I want to tell me how this happened. He said, well, I was on the phone texting Brent, which leave the phone, but whatever. Okay, so I was on the phone texting Brent, and I was telling him how I was getting tired and dozing off. And Brent was saying, well, you know, yeah, sometimes that happens. And he said, well, then I got hungry, and I was opening up a snack, and I realized how loud plastic can be in the woods when you're trying to be quiet. He said, so I finally got it open, and I took a bite, and I looked up, and the deer was standing there looking at me. He said, so I put the snack down, I pulled my rifle up, I shot, and I missed. The deer walked about 10 feet, turned and looked at him again. He had a perfect quartering away shot. He shot the deer, and it fell over in his tracks. It's the craziest first deer story I've ever heard in my life, because rarely does a deer just literally fall in its tracks. But not only that, the deer gave him a second shot. I don't know. He was eating candy, texting Brent. I mean, I don't know. It was crazy, but it was a fabulous deer, and I was very excited to see him get his first deer. So, yeah, he had 3 rounds. He only used 2. All right. Any other questions? Nope. Nothing to discuss.
Mm-mm.
All right.
I will say it must not be too uncommon to have your deer fall on the first shot, because I did the mentor hunt.
Uh-huh.
I was very fortunate. And you talk about kind of having that tunnel vision. I didn't realize the guy I was with was videotaping it. So I actually had my first shot on.
Wow. That's awesome.
If you want to see the unedited version, because I dropped an F-bomb as soon as I did. There's a truncated version on, I think it's on Kentucky Fish and Wildlife's website. Got it with a muzzle loader, and she just dropped right where she was. And I was so thankful, because I did not grow up shooting, and I was so nervous about my marksmanship, and I was scared to death that I'm going to gut shot this deer and it's just going to run off. But luckily I double lunged her, and she went, meh, and fell right where she was.
That's awesome.
Honestly, that was the best part. I started tearing up, because it's like, thank God she went right down.
Yeah.
But yeah, didn't realize until I watched the video, there was 2 other little yearlings right up behind her. I never saw them. I was focused on her, and just start shaking, and then all of a sudden, don't remember pulling the trigger, don't remember the sound, just remember smoke, and then just seeing her fall.
Wow. Well, I can tell you that it doesn't happen that way. It more often than not, they'll move some, even a little bit. My very first buck that it was my first deer ever, was a small buck, and it ran 100 yards, and not to get too disgusting, but it was a perfect heart-lung shot. There was no heart in the animal. It was totally obliterated, but he still ran 100 yards. And that's not uncommon. I have on occasion had one fall, but not very often. More often they'll move some. But the idea is we don't want them to go far, because like I said in the beginning, I hunt for meat, not to kill. And that's the least favorite part, right? But it's a required part. You can't harvest the animal without killing it. So the idea is to do that as humanely as possible. My first bow hunt, I thought I got a really good double lung punch. I think in retrospect, the arrow probably went just behind the diaphragm, or maybe just through it, which indicates more of a gut shot than a heart-lung shot. I waited the approximate time to let the animal lay down and bleed out, and when I went to go get it, I heard it jump and run, and I searched for 2 days, literally almost daylight till dark, to find that animal. My stomach, I was kind of sick for a couple of days, because I don't like shooting an animal that doesn't die soon. It's the most horrible feeling, because my goal is not to wound, hurt, or maim. My goal is to harvest. And the way to do that is to do it as quickly as possible. So I've only lost a few animals, only really lost 2, one bow hunting and one to the rifle. And I hit it both times, but unfortunately was not able to recover it. So those will happen if you hunt long enough. The way to avoid that is to know your limitations and to apply them to the choice of whether or not you take the shot. I said with this one rifle, I've never missed a deer with it. Again, not because I'm a great shot, but because I choose which shot to take and which one not to. So, all right. Anything else? That's a good story. But do you have the video? Is it emailable size?
I think so. I know it's on Facebook, so I can tag people in it and stuff too.
Okay, I'm not on Facebook, so that's.
But yeah, but I know I believe Easton's got the uncut version where you hear my long string of I haven't did it.
it, that's acceptable and excused. We get it.
It was not my finest moment, not very ladylike.
That's okay.
But yeah, I think I can email it out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you should have my email. I'd love to see it if it's small enough to email. I'd love to see it just because it's fun. I get a thrill out of that, having somebody that's never been hunting get that first animal. It is awesome to see it because I did it once. I want to see other people do it too. So it's pretty cool. Any other good stories? No. My first muzzle loading deer came a couple years ago just because I hadn't muzzle loaded hunted. And it's a story of follies. You know what? Actually, I think I shot more rounds muzzle loading than I ever have with a modern rifle. But I had a really nice buck cross a hill. I wasn't in a position to shoot it, so it was just walking, and it got away before I could get to a position to shoot. About a half hour later, a little smaller buck crossed in the exact same spot, but I was able to take the shot. It's a muzzle loader. It's modern, so there's not as much smoke as black powder, but there's still a bit of smoke. And when I shot, the deer just walked away. It didn't hunch up. It didn't make a sound. It just walked away. Well, it's a muzzle loader, so you can't reload quick enough to get a second shot. But of course I tried because, you can't help it. But in doing so, I double loaded the muzzle loader. So when I put my ramrod down in and realized it wouldn't go to the depth it should, I knew I had double loaded it without thinking. So I just picked up my stuff, walked back to the truck. So I had my muzzle loading tools to get all that junk out of there. And I looked for blood. I didn't see any blood. So I went onto the truck. I was a little disappointed, loaded everything up, got it cleaned up, fixed up, loaded like it should, and I started walking back. And I was looking for blood in about the spot again, and I kept hearing a sound that was a really weird sound. And what it was is I had double lunged the deer, and it had just walked off and sat down, and the breathing was labored, and that's what I heard. But it was in some tall grass. I couldn't see it well, but I crouched down to where I could get a shot. And as I shot, it went to stand up, and I missed that one. So I had to load another one, and I stood up. And when I stood up, I saw a doe coming down the same fence line. So I dropped back down. Well, apparently that buck scared her because she got to where the buck was, and she took off like greased lightning the other direction. Scared the buck. So I rushed another shot. I hit him again, but he was still alive. That was bothering me. I don't like this animal to be alive. So then I loaded another round. And I finally got a good clean neck shot where I put him out of his misery. But when I got done, I had black powder stuff all over the ground. I had primers. It was just crazy. I'm like, how in the world do I shoot this much in black powder, which, it's more than I've ever shot at a modern rifle. But I finally got the animal. The first shot was a beautiful shot, but he just walked over and laid down, and I did not know I'd got him. So that was my first black powder hunt. All right. Any other questions or comments or stories? All right. Please give feedback to anybody with Fish and Wildlife about how this class went. It is my first online class, and we covered a lot of stuff fast. I get that. But with an hour and a half, that was kind of the goal, is to get through as much as we can. So please call me if you have any other questions. Call Brent. Call anybody, Fish and Wildlife. All of us are very willing to help. Like I said, if you're anywhere near Frankfurt, come shoot different guns that I've got. I don't mind to do that. So I just want to get you to learn what you want to learn. And if it takes another phone call, please feel free to call. All right. Good deal.
Thank you. This was really great.
You're welcome. Thank you all.